Hey everyone! Welcome back to Product X. I'm Rena, your host. Today we're diving into a really fascinating corner of fintech, anti-money laundering and compliance investigations. Our guest today is a startup that just closed a massive $20 million seed round, and the story behind it is pretty wild. Tangos, based in Tel Aviv, assembled a team that reads like a spy thriller. A former U.S. Treasury OFAC sanctions officer, an ex-Israeli intelligence director, and top-tier AI architects. Their mission? To replace bank compliance analysts with autonomous AI agents that can investigate money laundering cases end to end. Yeah, you heard that right. AI detectives writing regulator-ready dossiers. Vivian, want to kick us off?
Hey, Rena. Hey, Nolan. Good to be here. So, yeah, I'm an angel investor with Pre-Angel Fund, focused on early-stage tech. And honestly, this Tangos deal is exactly the kind of project that gets me excited. Real pain point, massive market, and a team that actually understands the regulatory labyrinth they're stepping into.
Hey everyone, I'm Nolan. I spent years building systems at a major Silicon Valley tech company, so I come at this from the engineering side. And when I saw what Tangos is attempting, putting AI agents in a legally high-stakes financial compliance scenario, I knew we had to talk about the architecture behind it.
Perfect. Let's get into it. Vivian, here's my first question. The AML space already has players like FeedZai and Comply Advantage, giants that have raised hundreds of millions. Why would Red Dot Capital drop $20 million on a seed stage team tackling post-event investigations?
Great question. To understand the weight of that bet, you need to see the black hole banks are staring at right now. The 95% problem. Here's the thing. Banks have spent tens of billions on legacy AI monitoring tools over the past decade to catch suspicious transactions. But these systems are tuned so conservatively to avoid missing anything that 95% of the alerts they trigger are false positives. Yeah, 95%. That's an insane amount of noise. Once that alarm fires, the automation stops. Human analysts have to manually dig through corporate registries, trace beneficial ownership across jurisdictions, and write thick SAR reports. The actual crimes are hiding in that ocean of junk alerts. That's exactly where Tangos is inserting itself. The autonomous investigation layer, the most labor-intensive piece of the puzzle.
Right, and here's why that matters from a technical standpoint. Legacy systems do pattern matching. They flag anomalies based on rules. But money laundering is sophisticated. The moment you need to trace ownership chains across multiple shell companies in different countries, you're dealing with a fundamentally different problem. A rules-based system can't handle that complexity. You need reasoning, not just detection.
So the traditional software sounds the alarm, but Tangos actually goes and solves the case. Nolan, I want to dig into the architecture. How does an AI agent actually track money laundering networks, untangle shell company control chains, and produce a dossier that can go directly to regulators? Walk us through the underlying system.
Okay, so here's the core. You cannot use a simple chat box or pure LLM generation for this. The legal risk is too high. The false positive rate in the base data is already massive. So if your AI just hallucinates a conclusion, you're done. Tangos builds something called a multi-hop knowledge graph reasoning engine. When an alert comes in, say, a sudden large transfer by a shell company, the agent doesn't jump to conclusions. It constructs a hypothesis tree, branching out multiple investigative paths. Then it uses Bright Data's infrastructure to scrape corporate registries, shareholder documents, and even local news across jurisdictions. It transforms all that unstructured text into nodes and edges in a graph database. The key is the multi-hop reasoning. It uses graph neural networks to deduce ownership relationships that are deliberately hidden across multiple layers of offshore entities. The reasoning chain only confirms a risk when the causal probability converges across the entire path. Then it auto-generates a dossier with full evidentiary citations. No hallucinations, just grounded evidence.
That's the technical moat. Vivian, let's talk money. Bright Data made a strategic investment here, not just a check. What's the strategic logic behind that?
This is the most interesting piece of the deal for me. Bright Data is the world's largest public web data collection platform. To pierce through a transnational shell company, you need to scrape unstructured public data globally. Corporate filings, news articles, regulatory disclosures. Legacy compliance software works with structured data feeds, but the real evidence is scattered across the open web. Bright Data's entry is like giving Tangos' AI agents an unlimited data plugin. It directly addresses the fragmented data problem that killed previous attempts at automating this workflow. That's not just an investment, it's infrastructure-level leverage. It changes the unit economics for Tangos entirely.
Okay, now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Regulatory accountability. Nolan, you touched on this briefly. If an AI agent lets a bad actor slip through, or produces a flawed dossier that gets a bank fined, who actually holds the bag?
Yeah, this is the accountability hell. Here's the thing. If a monitoring tool triggers a false alarm, an analyst wastes a few minutes clicking cancel. But if Tango's AI makes an autonomous judgment that lets a sanctioned entity slip through, and the bank gets fined by regulators, how do you calculate liability? The industry consensus is clear. Automation changes how the action happens, not who is responsible for the outcome. So Tangos has to design a precise human-in-the-loop gateway. The AI can prepare all the evidence, draft the reasoning, even write the initial dossier. But the ultimate sign-off, the final decision to submit to regulators, has to stay with a human. The question is how to give the AI enough autonomy to be useful while maintaining 100% explainability and auditability. That's the engineering challenge.
And that's exactly why the team composition matters so much. You've got an ex-OFAC officer and an ex-Israeli intelligence director who understand exactly what regulators expect from evidentiary standards. That's the moat that can't be replicated by a better algorithm. The technology is the engine, but the regulatory know-how is the steering wheel.
Let's zoom out. 5 years from now, if Tangos executes on this vision, what does the AML landscape look like? Vivian, you first.
Honestly, I think we're looking at a complete pain point migration. Right now, banks are spending billions on false positive handling. If autonomous agents can cut that down significantly, the entire compliance workflow shifts from reactive monitoring to proactive investigation. The banks that adopt this early will have a massive cost advantage. The question is who captures that value? And right now, it's wide open.
I'd add that the technical bar just got raised for everyone. Once Tangos proves this architecture works, legacy vendors will have to either rebuild from scratch or partner with companies like Bright Data. The winners will be the ones who can combine reasoning engines with real-time data ingestion at scale. That's a hard engineering problem, not just a product pivot.
Love that. Okay, time for our lightning round. Quick fire questions, quick answers. First one, what's the most surprising thing about this deal?
The team composition. Ex-spies building AI detectives? That's not something you see every day in a seed round.
For me, it's the regulatory bet. They're essentially asking banks to trust AI agents with compliance decisions. That's a much harder sell than the technology itself.
Second question, biggest risk factor.
Adoption friction. Banks are notoriously slow to change their compliance stacks. Convince them to let AI write regulatory dossiers? That's a heavy lift.
Agreed. Plus, the liability question I mentioned earlier, that doesn't have a clear answer yet. Regulators will need to evolve alongside the technology.
Third, if this goes wrong, what does the failure look like?
A high-profile false negative that lets a sanctioned entity slip through, followed by massive fines and a regulatory crackdown on the entire sector. One bad case could set the industry back years.
And on the flip side, if it works, we're talking about a fundamental shift in how financial crime is fought. The upside is enormous.
Fourth hot take. AI will replace compliance analysts entirely?
Not entirely. The analysts transform into supervisors and auditors. The job changes, but it doesn't disappear.
Exactly. Human in the loop is non-negotiable for the foreseeable future. AI does the heavy lifting. Humans do the signing.
Last one. Would you invest in a competitor to Tangos?
At the right valuation, absolutely. The market is huge and the problem is real. But the team matters more than the idea here.
Same answer. Execution is everything. The architecture is the differentiator, and Tangos has a head start.
All right, let's wrap up. Vivian, give us a one-sentence summary of today's topic.
Tangos is attacking the most painful part of bank compliance, the 95% false positive burden, with AI agents that can investigate and dossier cases autonomously, and the convergence of regulatory expertise with serious engineering is what makes this bet worth watching.
Nolan, your turn.
The technical moat is real. Multi-hop knowledge graph reasoning, combined with real-time web data ingestion, creates something very hard to replicate. But the ultimate bottleneck isn't the algorithm. It's whether regulators and banks are ready to trust AI with compliance decisions.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks to Vivian and Nolan for breaking this down with us. If you enjoyed this deep dive into AI-powered financial compliance, hit subscribe and join us next time on Product X. Until then, keep exploring the tech frontiers. See you soon.